government is responsible for a wide variety of programs and services. These programs and services are paid for using financial resources provided by taxpayers. The annual operating budget is a document that describes the City of Newport News' plan in spending these resources. This financial plan lays out funding for all of the city's priorities. It details where the money to operate the city comes from and how it will be used. Join us for a few minutes as we discuss key questions about the city's budget.
A budget is a financial operating plan for any organization. What it does is it balances the money coming in, which are revenues, against expenditures, which is the money going out. The city charter requires the City of Newport News to have an annual operating budget. Not only that, the state of Virginia requires any locality with a population of over 100,000 to have an annual balanced budget, which is unlike the federal government. In the City of Newport News, the most familiar part of the operating budget is the general fund. That's where most of the services that citizens are familiar with, fire, police, libraries, and payments to schools, is located. There are other funds that have special dedicated revenues, such as waterworks, vehicle equipment services, and certain parks and recreation funds. An annual budget is presented to City Council by the City Manager for its consideration.
In the case of the city, revenue is money collected from taxes, fees, grants, and other sources such as reimbursements, and it's the income that the city uses to fund operations. As a result, the city must have a source of income to cover the cost of those services. Those sources of income are called revenues. Examples of some well-known revenues include personal property taxes, real estate taxes, meals taxes, cigarette taxes, business licenses, and numerous forms of state aid and reimbursements. The state reimburses the city for a number of public safety and human services programs. Another source of revenue comes in the form of state and federal grants. Because of the restrictions on the uses of grant monies and the unpredictability of grant awards, grant revenues are not calculated in the city's general fund budget. In some cases, the city receives revenues that are directly related to a particular service they're providing. For example, a household or business is billed an amount for a specific amount of water that they utilize. Therefore, public utilities, or waterworks, is set up as a separate fund called a user fee or enterprise fund. It has its own budget and is outside of the city's general fund budget.
Budget staff begins to review the potential budget outlook in the summer months, and by early fall has already briefed the city manager on the potential outlook by using historical, current, and projected revenue and expenditure trends. In the fall, around October, the budget instructions are developed and submitted to city operating departments and agencies. In the January-February timeframe, once these submittals are received by the budget department, the budget staff reviews the requests and then holds formal meetings with the departments to refine and review the budget submittals. In the February-March timeframe, the city manager holds budget hearings with the department heads, budget staff, and key assistant city managers. In the February-March timeframe, the budget department continues to refine and review the projected revenue outlook to determine what funding will be available in the upcoming fiscal year. And with these available revenue projections, along with the information that's provided in the budget hearings, the city manager is able to develop a funding level that would be used in the upcoming budget year. And this is what's known as the recommended operating budget.
By city charter, the city manager has to present his proposed budget to City Council no later than May 1st. Up until this point, all work on the city budget has been done behind the scenes. That all changes in late March as it becomes a very public process. By Virginia state law, City Council is required to hold at least one public hearing. The public hearings are one of the most important steps in the budget process, as that's the major format by which we obtain input from citizens to City Council. Following the 2 public hearings, City Council generally holds an additional work session to consider citizen input and also to make changes or to set the programs and services that will be provided in the following year's budget. Based on the work sessions and the public hearings, City Council gives input to the City Manager on any changes or adjustments desired in the recommended budget. State law requires that the school budget be approved by May 15th and that the city budget be approved by June 15th. After City Council votes on the next year's operating budget, the cycle begins all over. In fact, it never ends.
Ultimately, the final decision on the budget is made by City Council. City Council makes this decision based on the City Manager's recommendation, input from the departments and the departmental annual requests, input from citizens through the public hearings, input from citizen groups such as Taxpayers Association, Homeowners Association, elderly groups and the like, community support agencies, and then based on all that information, they come up with a final decision.
Citizens can communicate with City Council on the annual budget by attending 2 different public hearings. These public hearings are in 2 different locations, and the notice of the public hearings are advertised in the daily press. They can also communicate with written input. They can write in their comments or concerns to the city clerk's office. Their information can be distributed to the proper city official. They can also write in their comments or concerns via email. They can email any particular city council member, the city clerk, as well as the budget department. The city manager strongly encourages citizen input and participation.
As you can imagine, with such a large physical asset base in the city has a lot of capital projects that need to be undertaken every single year. The CIP is the city's plan. It's a 5-year plan to really identify and detail the highest priority capital projects and provide a schedule and a funding strategy for moving those projects forward. Capital projects include public building projects like Fire Station 3 here, the police headquarters project, the Newport Rec Center, also major technology investments, community development and redevelopment efforts, parks, facilities, upgrades and improvements. The school division falls within the city CIP, and they have quite an extensive capital program of their own, and that's a major component of the city's capital improvements plan. So the CIP itself is a 5-year plan, and in that context, it's a little bit different than the operating budget, which is a 1-year plan. It looks at 1 fiscal year. The CIP looks over a 5-year horizon, but it's updated every year. So as we get better information about project cost estimates, project plans, and really changing priorities, we can change the CIP on an annual basis.
The capital budget, by contrast, uses borrowed money to finance capital projects that are of a non-recurring, non-repetitive nature. These projects could be schools, recreation centers, and roads. The city borrows or finances for capital projects because the money is not readily available to finance million-dollar projects. And that's similar to an individual or a family might go through the same process when they're considering borrowing for a car or a home. It's just not, the money just isn't in the bank to be able to make the purchase. So you borrow and you smooth out your payments over a number of years. You might be wondering what debt service is. Once the city actually borrows money, a fixed amount of money, that's called principal. We repay that principal over time plus interest. The principal and the interest are our debt service payments. And those debt service payments are cumulative and they factor into the operating budget every year, so we pay the portion that comes due in that particular year. Borrowing for capital projects is an appropriate and necessary thing to do for a city of our size in order to finance expensive capital projects. But it is a long-term contractual obligation. It commits money from future budgets. So these kind of decisions are done with care and caution.
The proposed operating budget is made available for public review around the beginning of April, after it has been made public by the city manager. The adopted budget is usually available around the beginning of the new fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. While budget documents are not printed in quantity for general distribution, they are readily available at any Newport News library, on the city's website, and at the budget department. For further information, contact the Department of Budget and Evaluation. We thank you for joining us for this look at the city's budget. It is our hope that this program has provided you with a better understanding and appreciation of the financial workings of the city. Feel free to contact us with your feedback and questions.